Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been in the business since 1991, and Andy has been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. He's been a guest on this show, and he's a friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. So I can highly vouch for his business because I use it myself. Highest quality, weatherproof stickers, easy online ordering, and quotes on any size and shape sticker you can think of. Full color printing and 125 black and white stickers start as low as $25. Free shipping on all orders at dieselfuelprints.com. And my listeners get a 10% discount if they use the promo code AWP2021. Check out Andy and his stickers. He does a great job. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Ron Martinez, otherwise known as Ron Conflict. Ron is the singer for the punk band Final Conflict. He's the bass player in Lower Class Brats, and he runs Crawlspace booking. Me and Ron have been friends for a long time. He's been in the scene for like 40 years. He's a wealth of information. He's one of the biggest booking agencies in the underground scene. It was cool to talk to him, he's an inspirational dude to me in that he, like me, has just managed to turn this into his life. And I think people will learn a lot from listening to Ron. You can find all the links to Ron's stuff down below. You can find all the things for the podcast down below, Patreon, merch, all of that stuff. And let's get you to the episode on the other side of this. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. Today's guest is Ron Martinez, also known as Ron Conflict, from a number of bands, but kind of initially most famously from Final Conflict. And he's a tour booking agent, and he is also in the band Lower Class Brats, who listeners of the show remember the singer Bones was on. What's up, Ron? How are you, man?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah, like I was saying before we got started, like you've been on the list of like guests I want to have on forever, and I just need to spread you out from Bones a little bit. So I'm glad you're on, man. I'm glad I finally got you in here.
Yeah, man. I'm stoked to do it.
Yeah, I mean, one like right out of the gate, like you started in Final Conflict. You were really young, yeah.
Yeah, like pretty much almost out of high school. I was 19. I was playing in another band that I had joined called Convicted, which were kind of like the local Orange County party band. They did a 7-inch and stuff. I wasn't on that. Like I was like the replacement singer. And that's how we met the Final Conflict guys. And it just kind of ended up that after a while, the drummer of Convicted and I jumped ship and then joined Final Conflict.
How long had kind of Final Conflict been around before you got in there?
Jeff would have the exact time, but I know that he formed the idea and the concept of the band, like what he wanted, like his vision, as far back as 84, maybe even 83. And they did a couple gigs like at the Cathay de Grand and stuff like that with a different lineup, like different rhythm section. And as we got to know them, like when I first met them, it was a completely different lineup than the lineup I'm in, the Ashes lineup. Aside from Jeff, and Jeff wrote all the music and all the lyrics to the songs. Mm-hmm. And as we became friends, the first thing that happened was their bass player quit, and my band, the band I was in, Convicted, and then we were friends. And I told Jeff, hey, like my best friend plays bass and he's not in a band. Maybe he wants to join. Well, that was Warren Renfro. Mm-hmm. Like Warren, who's in Cadillac Tramps. He's played, now he's in Greg Anista's and Greg Anista's new band? I can't remember what it's called, but Warren plays like in that. Warren's been my best friend since high school days. We actually met at Knott's Berry Farm as kids. So he joined Final Conflict. And then what had happened was we were all hanging out at a show, a bunch of us together, and Convicted and Final Conflict had played a couple gigs together. And one day at the Olympic, being drunk, I had told Jeff how much Dave, our drummer of Convicted, and I were fans of Final Conflict, and how we really, man, I wish we were in your band, because we really like what you're doing. And then the next thing we know is like a month later, we're rehearsing in Final Conflict. That's really what happened. Like, where Jeff was like, I'd love to have you be my singer. I'd love to have you as my drummer. So he basically kicked everyone out. Like, you're out, the new guys are in. And I want to say, like, make it clear too, although it might sound like, well, that's kind of fucked. He just like kicks these guys out. There was problems with those members because they weren't as into being in Final Conflict or as good as Jeff wanted them to be. And He felt that we fit in more too. So why shouldn't he have people that seemed to want to be in the band and were more fitted to what he wanted to do? So, and luckily, because Jeff made that move, that I got to be in Final Conflict, and Final Conflict kind of has led to everything, to me being in other bands. I learned how to book. I learned how to manage bands. I learned all that stuff through Final Conflict, and the experiences I had, and how I ended up here is running my own booking agency. Like, it all started with that.
Yeah. And well, that's like a kind of common reoccurring theme on this show, on this podcast a lot, is like, just like how many of us learned how to have a life just from the DIY thing, from the early hardcore scene. Like, if you wanted to play a show, you didn't have to wait for some grown-ups to let you do it. You could find a place to book bands and get bands in there. If you wanted to make a record, didn't have to have a record label necessarily. You could contact the plant. You could do everything on your own. And it was like, I feel like we were like the first generation of kids who kind of figured out that we didn't really need adults to do a lot of this stuff. Cause like the 60s and 70s people, even they were still, it was like, well, you got to get on record label and all that shit. And it's like, we just kind of like took the DIY thing and just like ran with it and in a crazy way. And now it's like DIY is just like a word, like your grandma knows what DIY is, and it was like, we kind of pioneered that spirit, I think.
Yeah. And that's where, like, you got to give props to the people like SST, Chuck and Greg Ginn, and Ian and Jeff at Discord Records, because they really did lay it out, like the whole touring network and being in a band and going out on tour and putting out your own records and distributing yourself and basically learning as you go along. And then it created a snowball effect. Now, both of those guys are both very financially well off, and they deserve it because they put the work in, and because of what they did, guys like you and I are able to do what we do because they kind of laid the foundation. But yeah, like, I mean, to this day, Black Flag doesn't sound commercial. Minor Threat doesn't sound commercial in any way, but they made it work, So yeah, it was like, that was definitely for me the building blocks, and knowing that we could, well, how did they do it? Oh, okay, follow their lead.
Yeah, there was something about being in the scene in the early and mid 80s where you could see somebody else doing something. You could be like, well, I can do that too. And then you just figure out a way to do it. You know what I mean? Like, one of my things with, I got to talk about a lot about how I taught myself to screen print so I could kind of like bootleg my way into contact with bands. But one of my other things that I would do is like, just had a rubber stamp made that looked professional, with Mike Fisher Productions and an address. And I would just send letters to bands, like, and had a little stamp. And because it looked official, they would always open the letter. And so it was like, I was like corresponding with all these bands all the time. And it was like, that's how I didn't want to do anything but make art for bands. And so I just like I was like, just figure out how to get in contact with these people. And then it's like, hey, next time you're in town, I'll come and see you. And then, and you know how the punk rock scene is like, once you've met somebody, like, you're now friends. You know what I mean? Like, and so the next time they're through, or the next time you're through their space, like, there's always that gigantic network of like, everybody's like 1 degree from each other.
Yeah, everybody knows each other. And I'll get bands that will contact me for advice or something. And when I have time to respond, and it could be a band that's saying, hey, we want to know how to get on a label, or if we should, or how do we get to be an opening act? And I go, well, let me tell you, there's this thing called the internet. It's really fucking cool. And you just go and if you want to play or you want to work with this band, send them an email, reach out to them, do it analog, go to their show, hand them stuff. Cause it's like, I'll tell bands when they're like looking for a label, I'll say, look, put your songs up on a Bandcamp. Don't email MP3 files to people. You will annoy them, especially if you do it wrong and you clog up their email. Then they don't want to listen to you. Make a nice little Bandcamp that they can sample your music. Keep it simple. Let them know that your band exists. I go and send it to every label that you want to be on, even labels that you are positive they would never put out your record. Just send it to them, because you never know. Because there's been so many times I'll talk to somebody who runs a label and I'll say, how did you find that band, man? Like, they're fucking great. And and he goes, they sent us an email. We checked out their Bandcamp and it was like, this band's awesome. We better sign them before someone else does. And it could be that simple. Like, I've gotten some of my artists that I work with on huge tours where even they flipped out how I got them opening. And it was as simple as, oh, I actually know someone who knows that artist. And I know that they collect vinyl. So I went to the show and handed them a vinyl copy of your record. They obviously liked it because their agent called me and offered you, 2 weeks to tour with them. That's how I got Pinkish. When I worked with Pinkish Black, a great fucking band. We don't work together. They got a new agent now, but we're still cool and they're an amazing act. I got them on tour with Ghost right when Ghost blew up. And that's how I did it. I went to go see Ghost. I was friends with one of the Nameless schools. And I brought them vinyl copies of the new Pinkish Black record, did it analog style, but it's just a matter of like never dismissing yourself, believing in yourself and going, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, or they don't respond to my email.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's like, you learn that from punk rock.
I don't know if you remember, there was a website called mp3.com. And it was kind of Bandcamp before Bandcamp, where like you, as a band, you could put your music up there and people could actually order, CDs full of MP3s from you and stuff. And that was like in the 97, 98, 99 time period. I got tons of work by just messaging bands on mp3.com. Like DRI had an mp3.com and I just sent them an email and I was like, hey, if you guys need art, hit me up. And then I ended up doing all the art for DRI for like 4 years. It was like, just, that I would spend like an hour a night. What's that?
Yeah. You put yourself out there. You let them know. When I started following you, or you followed me first, but I followed you back because I looked at the art. I already had it in my head. Like, this guy's doing some legit great stuff. I got to make sure to keep following and keep track, because when we need a t-shirt, I want to hit him up about it. And then you hit me up a few months later to say, hey, by the way, if you're ever interested in doing a project, I'd love to do something for either of your bands. And I was like, perfect. Now I don't have to worry about you saying, bro, I'm really busy.
Yeah, I'm literally never too busy. Anybody asks me, even if I'm too busy, I'm not too busy. Anybody asks me and I'm like, I do not know how to say no, unless they try to get me to do something for free. And then it's always no. Cause at this point in my life,
anybody who's listening to this,
years old.
Anybody who's listening to this podcast, I'm going to do this on behalf of all the artists and tattoo artists out there and everything. The bro deal is this. If you have a bro who is a working artist, even a bartender, or that supplies a service, this is what the bro deal is. You don't ever insult them by saying, hey, can you give me a bro deal? If they're going to give you a discount on the work, they're going to do it if they can. But the bro deal is this. You pay your friend what they're worth, and you help your bro exist another day without having to get a job at fucking Target or Amazon. That is what the bro deal is you help your artist friend. Like, I never, like, the guy who works on my guitars, a tattoo artist, I never say like, hey man, you're going to hook me up, right? Because if I know already I can't afford their work, I'm not going to ask them. I don't expect somebody to give me a deal because I was in this band that was relevant X amount of years ago. Right. Screw that. And that's what the bro deal is. The bro deal is you keep your bro your friend, and that applies to female as well, if she's a female artist or whatever.
Women can be
working,
bros, totally.
Yeah, keeping them working for another day without having to like take orders from somebody else.
Shit, that goes for bartenders and food servers.
Everybody.
If your friend does anything, like you tip double, you know what I mean?
Because you understand what it's like, and it's like, tip at least $1 per drink, like it's a courtesy. And if the bartender's a jerk, then don't tip after that. But at least tip up front, It's like I'm really surprised at like people who always want something for nothing, always. So they always expect like, well, I'll work with them if they give me a deal. And it's like, how's that work for you when you go to Target?
Or when you need your toilet plumbed or something.
When you need your toilet plumber, when you go to the gas station to fill your van up and you're going, hey, dude, you're going to hook us up, right? Because we're a band on tour.
We'll get massive exposure. We're going to tell everybody about your gas station.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't work. And especially when it's your friends, you should want to like help them out as much as possible. And a good friend will cut you a deal when they can, but it shouldn't be expected. Those are the people you should not expect to take a cut in price.
Yeah, the only time at this point in my life when I do is if it's like a charity thing. Like if it's a charity or if it's like a like I just did some work for this sober group in Dallas, and it's like, if it helps support other people, making healthy choices, I will give my time to doing that. Or like, I did a cover for Punk Rock Saves Lives record, and it's like, man, like that shit's helping the world. Like, of course. And they don't have to ask for that either, like,
it's no different than doing a benefit show. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
totally.
Getting asked to play, if it's for a cause we support, but I've always been annoyed when I've heard even my own friends like, oh, I'll work with them, but they're going to have to give me a deal because I know them. It's like, oh, come on, man. That's so disappointing to hear.
Yeah, I was stoked to do work for Lower Class Brats. I'm like, I'm a super huge fan of that band. So
that
it was
shirt
like super
did
cool
for us was so awesome because it was so like on the nose of what we were trying to do, and it's fun. Mm-hmm. Like it's a fun thing, and it's respectful, to its origin,
to its roots.
So yeah, that's actually the first time in a long time that we've had a shirt where I've been like, I don't normally wear shirts, especially in public of bands I'm in, but I'd wear that fucking shirt because it's so fucking cool. I just hope no one would recognize like, that's the fucking bass player, Lower Class Brats, and he's wearing his own shirt. What is he, from England now?
Yeah. The only time you're allowed
British fans will always wear their own shirt.
The only time it's really acceptable is when you're on tour, because every now and then you're like, I'm out of clean shirts, and you got to dig in the box and get a shirt out. That happens.
I've been fortunate enough to avoid that. It's just, I'd be really bummed to be like caught in Target or something shopping, and I got like, a box of litter in one hand and like a cat toy in the other, and I'm like wearing a Final Conflict shirt or something, and some guy goes, hey, what's up? And I'm just like, I'm a fucking loser. I'm a tool.
Oh yeah. It happens. It's like this episode probably won't come out until after Psycho Vegas, so I guess I can talk about it at the moment. But I just did a shirt for like a special Psycho Las Vegas shirt for Cannibal Corpse, that they're just gonna sell at that show. That is, nice. It's not a tribute in the same way that yours is, but it's like, it's a one-off, and I think it's the very first intentionally humorous Cannibal Corpse piece of merch I've ever seen. And I guess like, going with the merch company back and forth between the band, I guess like all the guys in the band were just like, this is fucking hilarious. Like everybody's super stoked on it. I can't wait to put it out there.
Awesome. Now I'm curious.
Well, I can tell you now because this isn't going to be out until after the shirt's out. But it's a bunch of zombies like rampaging through a casino.
Oh, okay.
On the front, and then on the back, it's a bunch of hungover zombies at a breakfast table, like drinking.
Oh, eating buffet.
Those big Bloody Marys that have like a meal on the but it's like hands and eyeballs and shit, and they're like in sunglasses and all passed out. It's fucking awesome. It's super funny. Yeah, the merch company came to me and they were like, "Oh, we have this idea. We thought it'd be funny. We're gonna do a sketch and then we're gonna run it by the band. We're not sure if they'll go for it." And then I guess they were all like, "That's fucking amazing." And so there we go.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know when Agoraphobic Nosebleed played this festival in Texas about 7 years ago, and they did like a shirt just for the fest, and it was with Leatherface ripping a dude in half with a guitar that turns into a chainsaw.
Yeah, it's rad.
Really cool.
Yeah, they always have like the best merch, like like Agoraphobic Nosebleed and Pig Destroyer, like. And that whole stuff is like always got really good merch.
Yeah. Have you been in contact with the Pig Destroyer guys?
No, I'm like the last artist on earth who's never done any work for them.
I know. I know people. When we get done with this, I'll give you their direct contact since I'm their agent. So.
Oh, rad. Nice. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing them at Psycho. I haven't seen them I don't know if I've seen Pig Destroyer since the old Murder Fest, LA Murder Fest, actually. It's been like 10 years since I've seen those dudes. Yeah. They're doing
Psycho, and then they're gonna do a Prowler in the Yard set in Philly at the Decibel Fest.
Nice. Is it Decibel one? Is that beer fest or whatever?
Beer metal fest, yeah.
Yeah, I ain't going out to Philly in the summertime for nobody. Yeah. So like your booking stuff, do you manage bands or do you just do booking manager or like, I'm not sure.
I'm just strictly a booking agent, but with certain bands, and just because we're an independent world, sometimes certain bands, like it does lean into kind of like ghost management with some of these bands and just like giving advice and stuff like that. But primarily I only handle the booking. Like I don't deal with like their merchandising or anything like that, tour management. I just do the arrangements for their tours and shows, like dealing with the promoters, the venues, the festivals, and dealing the negotiations about payment, lack of payment, whatever. And then working with the band, do you accept this? Do you not accept it? And then finalizing the deal, doing the paperwork,
Do you do stuff overseas or just US?
Occasionally like for a few fests here and there, but if they have, cause there's certain bands that don't have overseas representation because they don't really tour. And those ones I might, if they want to go and play a fest, I might negotiate that. But certain bands do have, overseas agents. And if an offer does come to me for a festival, I automatically just say, hey, talk to this guy, here's their European agent. He's the one that will deal with that because it's across the pond,
Yeah.
So it's just an unwritten law of respect, that you don't try to like pilfer other people's work when there is someone that's capable of doing the job.
Yeah, sure. It goes that way in the art business too, in the band merch business. Like it's enough work for everybody. You don't have to step on other people's toes,
Yeah, there's always in any industry, there's always that one or two guys that are out there trying to like pilfer people, and they usually don't have a good shelf life because it just gets around. Like if they're so shitty as to try and pilfer off other people's work, there's other stuff that they're not ethical about, and that's
of course
is up with them.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. That is absolutely a universal. Like if you're selling, if you're wholesaling tires, there's still always that dude.
Yeah,
doesn't matter what it is. So, I mean, how long your tour booking is called Crawlspace?
Yes.
Tour booking? Did you get that from the movie Crawlspace?
No. I actually, but that's a great fucking movie.
I know. I always wondered if you got it's such a weird movie.
But if it would have been, I should be like scolded because that movie gets fucked up. But no, what it was years ago, I was, just promoting, like doing local shows, and the venue that I was speaking to them and finalizing details. And I'm like, okay, look, I've got the bands, this is who's going to play. And I was giving them the details to put in the advertisements. And they said, okay, what about the production? Like, what is your production company called? And I was like, what? And they were like, well, I mean, we could put Ron Martinez Presents. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I was like, and I was actually reading at the time this Time Life series of true crime books. And I had been reading one, and I was reading one, and I was on the chapter, which was about John Wayne Gacy. And the book was open, and the title of his chapter, like in the book, was called Crawlspace. And I was on the phone, and I just looked at the book, and I was like, call it Crawlspace Presents. It was that simple.
That's amazing. So that's even better. Gacy.
So yeah. So at the beginning, I used to, when I was really like, I was a little younger than I am now. I mean, this is like 20 years ago. I'd be like, yeah, like Crawl Space. It's like where you bury the bodies under your house. If you're John Wayne Gacy, I would say stuff. Ha, ha, ha. Now it's just because sometimes I have to repeat it to people. Like, hey, this is Ron from Crawl Space Booking. And they're like, what? And I'm like, Crawl Space, like the thing under your house, like, it's like, I should have made it more simple. Like, I don't know, hit music booking or something where it was just a little easier to understand.
Yeah. I like it though. I like it.
But that's the origin. That's where it came from. There was really no thought into it whatsoever.
That's awesome.
It was just, I needed a name, and that it looked really ominous, and it was just the Crawl Space, and it was in this big font on the page of the book, and it was just almost like, and there was actually a Crawl Space Records for a while too, like at that same time, like just again for the lack of just it works. I put out, me and my friend Andy, we put out a couple of records by bands on the label.
I didn't know that was also you. I do remember Crawl Space Records. Oh wow, what records did you put out? What bands?
We did in a We Talks, Onward to Valhalla. We did a split label release with Dystopia on the.
There you go. That's why I remember Crawl
That's
Space.
The one. Okay, yeah. We did a split release with them, and then we did an infamous Gehenna release as well. That was like our final, I think, Crawl Space release was the Gehenna LP and CD, and then it wasn't out on Crawl Space, but it was us. We actually put out Thrice's first record.
Oh wow!
Yeah, their very first record. They were friends, and they worked at the record store that I worked at with my partner Andy. It was his record store, and we decided we were going to help them out. We were good kids, and we thought they were doing something valid, and so we decided to put out the record. But we consciously decided not to put it as Crawl Space because the record label was Grind, and it wasn't. We didn't want to confuse people, so we let them pick out, like, what do you want to call the label? And so how about Green Flag? And so, but it was really a Crawl Space record. It was done with Crawl Space money. Dystopia and Gehenna, infamous Gehenna, paid for that first Thrice record to come out.
That's amazing. Talk about Dystopia and Thrice, like two bands that are as far apart as you could get.
Yeah. And that Thrice record, man, those guys hadn't even left Orange County. They had never played even out of Orange County. And we hadn't even sold out of the first pressing of that yet. And major labels were calling us. Wow. Like Island Records was calling us about the band, like wanting to, like, interested in signing them. It was we had achieved our goal. We just wanted to help them put out the record and then help them get on a real label. But we were like thinking, hey man, if you guys are really lucky, you'll get signed to Fat, or wow, maybe even Epitaph. But we had all these major labels calling them up. And again, they hadn't even left Orange County yet.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really unusual. Really happy to help those guys, because those guys to this day are really, really good people. Really good kids.
Yeah. That's
I'm calling them kids if they're in their 40s.
I know, right? I know. God, dude. Like, I turned 52 this week, and I'm like, fuck.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like starting to get to that point in my life where I'm like, I can no longer kid myself. Like, it's like when you're 40, you're like, yeah, I'm still keeping it together.
Still got it.
Yeah. And then and then you get to 50 and you're like, yeah, the reality's setting in. Then once you get past 50, a couple years, you're like, yeah, no, I'm a fucking old dude. But it's fine
Yeah,
because at least I'm a cool old dude.
Yeah, I'm 55 now, and yeah, and I've reached that where I'm like, no matter how hard I want to think or try, I'm old. I'm an old guy now, and just certain things, like, I mean, I'm so self-conscious, a lot more self-conscious about my behavior and stuff, to like not play a fool, and
Totally.
I'm and just thinking about certain things, like I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up sore or anything like that. I'm in good physical shape, luckily, but I still have had things where it's like, I'll like pull a muscle in my back because I held in a sneeze, and I'm like, that's like the stuff that wakes you. We go, you're fucking old, Martinez, like,
Well, at least you're still in cool band. That is Final Conflict still going? Do you guys play shows?
Yeah,
still?
Yeah. We actually are gonna start writing some new material and stuff. I mean, pandemic really affected us because Jeff Harp, the guitar player, his wife was a nurse. Is a nurse, I should say, and he was so like susceptible to getting COVID, and so we decided, like, hey, we can't rehearse, because it's just too much risk. But now, things are taming down, and now everyone's vaccinated, so we can be cool and stuff. But yeah, like we were just starting to write new material, and then COVID hit.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I know you're from SoCal, but you were in Texas for a while, because the first time I met you was at 8 Ball's, a little bar in his house.
Man, I miss those parties at his little place, man.
Yeah. I remember I was there, and like Bruce Reeves came up, and you're like, how do you know Bruce? And I'm like, I like my best friend. And you're like, fuck, let's call him. And we like called him in the middle of the night, and we're like, we're fucking wasted.
Oh yeah, just fucking with. I totally remember that. I remember too that
must have been like 2007 or something.
Yeah, and I had a hotel room to go to, but I was so wasted that I just went and slept up in the rafters of I just went up there and passed out, and then got woken up at like 10 a.m. by a band, because he was actually hosting bands and parties, and got woken up at 10 a.m. by a band sound checking in that warehouse of his, man. Like,
that place was super rad.
But
you lived in Austin for a while, right?
Yeah, ended up when I met you there. Then I wasn't living there, but okay. I was out there for South by.
Right.
But we ended up moving out there and staying for a while. Like, and then the time came where my wife had finished university, and my parents were getting a lot older. And we knew Trump was going to get elected. The election was a year away, and I was like, I do not want to stay in a red state when that fucker gets elected. And that was at the time where like everyone was laughing at him and like, like fat chance he's going to win. And I'm like, no, he's going to win.
I knew the whole time too. I was
and the only saving grace, and why I'm not going to blow my brains out, is I'm going back to California and get the fuck out of here. And so that's what we did. I really like living in Austin. Was cool. I think that everybody should go and live somewhere else. Even if you end up like, I lived in Long Beach for like 20 years and then, but came back, and now I live in my hometown, in Southern California. I live in my hometown, which wasn't intentional. It just was by happenstance. And I'm actually really happy here because I'm 25 minutes from downtown LA, where all the shows are. And I have all the benefits of living in a cool city like Long Beach, and none of the problems. I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to worry about,
parking. Long Beach is fucked. My daughter lived there, and it was like, she's like, I can't afford to live here because there's no place to park, and I get tickets so much that she's like, I gotta get out of Long Beach.
Yeah, like even in Long Beach, if you find a really great deal, you have to, like, I've had to tell many of my friends, make sure that it comes with parking. And if it doesn't come with parking, you better go to that area at 5 o'clock and see what it's like. Because sometimes it's like, there's no good parking, you got to go home straight after work, and then you're stuck there.
Yep.
Because there was times where, like, sometimes, like when I had an apartment with no parking, I'd have to like certain nights, man, I'd have to park like half a mile away from my place. So I would keep a skateboard in the trunk of my car.
Right. Exactly.
And just park my car and then skate to my apartment.
We lived in Echo Park for like 8 years, and we were like, walking distance to Dodger Stadium, and like, beginning of the season, it was like, well, I'm not going anywhere today because I'll never find a place to park. And like, sometimes it'd be like, it's like fucking mile. So I would keep my skateboard in my car too, and just be like, I guess I'm skating home today. And it's like, and then it would be like, oh, if there's like a big concert, it'd be the same thing, or like some festival in the park or something. You're like, fuck, like, what was that, Echo Park Rising like festival, where it's like, God, there's no, like, you couldn't like, you couldn't leave for the whole weekend because you just there would be no place to park for miles. It was ridiculous.
But I do think it's for everybody should go and live somewhere else for a period of time in their life.
Absolutely.
For the experience and to see that like where you live is not the only place in the world. Like I remember when I was moving to Austin and telling like family members, and they were like, how are you, like, see, like here, and this is more funny than anything. Like I've been a vegetarian since I was 19, and actually most of I'm pretty much vegan. But and the reason why I bring this up is I'm kind of an anomaly in my family because I have a Mexican Catholic family, and to this day I still have, like, when I'm at a family gathering, I have to remind family members that I don't eat meat.
And I'm sure you get ribbed a lot about it.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, like I said, but this isn't something new. I'm in my 50s, and I've been like this since I'm
like 40 years. People, come on.
Yeah, but anyways, like I remember saying, "Oh, I'm going to move to Texas," and I had family members that were being genuine, like, "Well, how are you gonna like? Are you gonna be okay with like food? Because all those Texans, man, they're all about meat. And they're all about this." And I was just like, Texas is not like a caveman place,
especially
like,
Austin.
Austin, I'll be fine, like, but there's so many people that think that where they live is the only good place. It's the only safe place, and it's like, I really liked living in Texas. I really like the people there a lot. I really do. I like the people of Texas. And there's certain things about Austin I really miss. Like I miss End of an Era Records. It's one of the best record stores in the United States. I love that place. I miss Bolden Creek. I miss my friends. But Southern California is my home, man. And like, and I got my family here, and I really love living here. Like, I really do. I'm happy to be back, and I'm staying in it. And, no, contrary to what the Republican Party wants people to think, that there's dog shit everywhere and human feces and that you trip over homeless people and needles everywhere, It's a great place to live. And we were talking about earlier, it's the 5th largest economy on the fucking planet. We're doing fine. We're the one state that could secede from the United States.
I mean, I think Texas,
and we would be missed. Huh? Yeah, the entire West Coast, man.
Texas could probably pull it off. But
if they don't
about
kill
it
themselves without the because they're just so fucking anti-regulation, things are blowing up left and right over there.
Yeah,
in the power grid. But but
that's a whole bunch of madness. I think personally, to even expand on that, I don't think. I think everybody should have to leave the country. Also,
you
should have not even leave your state. You should have to leave this country at least once in your life and go somewhere and see someplace else. Because I think that's kind of a lot of. I think that's a lot of Americans' problem, is that they think they know what other places are like, but until you've gone, you can't say. Like, it's such an eye-opening place. Like, I'm very fortunate. People like us are very fortunate. We have been in bands that allow us to go see the world. It's like, I've been in 45 of the states, and I've been in like 10 countries and it's like, a lot of it, unfortunately, was like in crust punk houses, and that's no way to see the world. But
but you still went.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in Europe, like our booking agent was also, there was like these two guys, and one of them was our driver, and he was really good about like, oh, let's like go do stuff also. Like, we don't just have to go to the venue and like park it. It's like, after you're done, the next day on the way out of town, let's like go to an amusement park, or we'll go to this, this area in like Hungary and see something. And we got to see all this cool shit. So it was cool that they made a point of like, giving us a little bit of a cultural tour as well.
We the last European tour I did with 46 Short was exactly the same thing, because our driver was like a history major. So he would say, hey, on the way to the next show, there's actually these really cool castles we can go and see. Do you want to go? Yeah, fuck yeah. Like, yeah, same thing. Like, we got to see a lot of stuff all over Europe. I mean, there's still countries that I haven't gotten to visit I'd like to go to, like Spain, Japan. Brats and Final Conflict were supposed to tour Japan in 2020, but until the pandemic is taken care of, we won't be able to go. But yeah, I've been really fortunate to go all over Europe, and even like some countries that had just years previous to us going there had civil wars. Like, and it's really, I totally agree with you. I went and saw Henry Rollins do a speaking appearance, and his whole thing, his 2-hour thing, was telling about his adventures and traveling in different places where people would say, you're going there, it's dangerous. And it wasn't,
Right.
And his whole thing was, it was at a college campus. He was just trying to encourage them, get a passport and travel and see things for these exact same reasons. Like, know what you're talking about. Don't still say, well, I saw 3 movies about that country and this is what it's like.
Or I read some article,
Yeah.
I read some article. Yeah. I mean, Henry Rollins is, I'm not like an idol based person, so I wouldn't say he's one of my idols, but Henry Rollins and Ian MacKaye are both like massive influences on me. But of course, I grew up in that time when they were kind of the two biggest guys in the hardcore scene, and and so I have a bunch of Henry's books, and my wife, she's a hairstylist in Hollywood and stuff. She does TV commercials and movies and all kinds of shit. And she worked with Henry Rollins one day on this project. She got to work with Lemmy and Henry Rollins and fucking all these crazy people on this project. And she snuck one of my Rollins books out and like got him to sign it for me. And I was like, fucking, I was so stoked.
That's rad.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky I get to see Black Flag like right towards the end. Well, I guess I saw him the first time I saw him was like Slip It In or My War. I can't remember. So I got to see him, Black Flag toured so relentlessly. I grew up in the Bay Area, so it was like, they were through every 6 months. And so, I got to see him probably, at least a half a dozen times, and pretty fortunate. And, one time I got to like chat with Henry once, and it was like, it's like a fucking 15-year-old kid. That was pretty rad for a 15-year-old kid, to get some time with somebody who's like output and outlook and like just always been a huge fan of how he like runs his shit. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, he's a fucking dickhead or whatever, but I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, he's inspired a lot of my life.
I'm in agreement with you. The guy's done the work, and it's kind of cool that he's been able to forge career just by being himself, by being himself and like being a music fanatic. And now he's getting paid to talk about other people's music and inspire other people to listen to that music. I mean, that's what a great job that is, because I've been doing that on mixtapes since I was a kid. I was the kid that turned all my friends on to, like, when I went to Zed Records and bought the Minor Threat 7-inch and then put it on tape and made it for all my friends, and first heard Rudimentary Peni and the Bad Brains, and making mixtapes for all my friends. So if I could get that as and I look at what I do as kind of like that. I'm putting mixtapes out on the road and going, I'm really into this band. I want you to check them out. Like, I've been able to figure it out, but it's because of guys like, Greg Ginn's another one. He's pretty like now with this incarnation of Black Flag that he has, like doing the oldie circuit,
I got to see that. It was actually really fun.
I've got an opinion about all that, but the thing is the guy put in the work, and because of what guys like Henry and Greg and Ian did, and Chuck Dukowski, who doesn't get enough credit, as well as like
Chuck's the shit.
Yeah,
Chuck is the shit.
Underground touring network, like Black Flag and SST, they did it all. They'd not only book their own tours, but they brought the PA with them. They brought their own PA because they knew half the time that if somebody said that they could organize a show, the PA was going to be some crap ass rehearsal thing. So
or nothing would be there, or there wouldn't be nothing there. My old band in the 80s, we played with the Circle Jerks, and it was like, at some venue where nothing had ever been done there before. It was like a gymnasium. It was like a basketball gym or something. And it was like, the promoter all the bands showed up, no promoter showed up, like nothing. It was like there was no production happening. Like it was the weirdest thing.
I can tell you my Final Conflict story is the exact same thing. Showing up at Jackie Robinson's hall and going to see a show there 2 weeks previous, and there was a stage and there was lighting, and we show up and the promoter shows up 2 hours later, and we're on the floor of the gymnasium with a PA that was brought last minute, by one of the opening acts.
Yeah, like Circle Jerks were just like, they were like, oh, don't worry about it. We have a generator. We have a full PA. Let's fucking rock and roll. And like, all of us just got together, set everything up, and fucking, it was ripped. It was awesome. Yeah. It was one of the most fun shows ever. And it was like one of those things. I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I was like, that's how you fucking do it. Like, you just get it done. You know what I mean? And like, they were prepared.
Yeah. Figure it out. You don't just say, well, I guess that's it. No, you figure it out. You figure out, how do we have a problem. Let's not waste time seeing whose fault it is. Let's just fix it first. And then we'll get to the finger pointing or whatever later.
Yeah. It's like, we've got punk rock to do, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That shit we're not waiting around for nothing.
Because we're definitely not getting paid. Yeah. We're not making money off of this. So we got to be able to at least do what we came to do, which was to play.
Yeah, for sure. You're a booking agent, and this is a thing that I've talked with other bands about, and I'm curious about your opinion on it. Actually, it just occurred to me. Why is there such a massive difference between how bands tour in Europe versus how bands tour in the States? Where it's like, when you go to Europe, like, you will have a place to stay. You will get fed at least once, maybe twice. There'll be a shower. You'll have a van. You will get paid every single place you play, no matter how many people show up. And I don't feel like that for a certain level of band in the States, you will never get that. And I found it to be like shocking how much easier it was to tour in Europe than it was the States. Like, what do you think that is?
That's an awesome question. And you're of all the podcasts that I've done and like about and talk about booking, you're the first person that's asked that. And so thank you, like, because it's never really dawned on me. But I think the difference is in the DNA of America versus the DNA of like hospitality in general. And I'm just not talking about music and touring. I'm talking about in general. Like, America has that total, like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and nothing is free and blah, blah, blah. And if you want it, you got to work for it. And, whereas in Europe, people in general, like, are given a living wage to work. Bartenders and service industry people actually in Europe get paid a living wage. And, like, it's mandatory, and people get paid medical leave. The women get paid maternal leave. They get mandatory vacation, 6 weeks in Europe. You get 6 weeks a year of vacation paid. It's mandatory. Okay, now there's someone in there going, yeah, but their taxes are blah, blah, blah. Well, first off, we're taxed up the ass too. The only difference is the majority of our taxes go to subsidize billionaires and their companies and farmers that are sitting, like, not all farmers, but certain farmers that are paid to not grow crops that could feed people.
Right. They grow corn.
Paid to sit on their hands. So I know I'm getting a little too political, but what it gets down to is, like, Europe just in general it's in their DNA, almost like in the language of the people of just being hospitable. And in the United States, it goes so far back just into, like, our country and how their attitudes towards, like, people on welfare and that are always asking for handouts. Like, no, man, here's the deal. You come into my club, you play, I pay you, and you're lucky. And if I give you anything else, I shouldn't be expected to handle that. Like, right. And I understand that. I'm not bitching about that. but I think that's what it is, because many times when I've done European tours, I've had the promoters, or I'll have someone go, I heard that in America, like, you're lucky if you get a free meal. You're lucky if you get like, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, why? You're performing for people. You're performing for the venue. You're bringing in, like, why wouldn't they feed you? Like that's what you do, Because
from
experience,
pizzas, for Christ's sake.
Yeah,
$20 worth of pizzas. Fuck.
Yeah, and it's just like, like I've had certain artists that when I'm working with them or we're preparing a tour, and I might have a band that might be a little unrealistic about the accoutrement of of what they're worth, or they want their guarantee, and they want all like the trimmings and the hospitality as if they were a theater band selling out a theater. Right. And I'll have to go, hey, listen, you're going to need to like think about this. Like, are you touring to play music for people and to push your music out there? Or are you touring to party? Because it doesn't really, I'll make sure that you have a budget for some food and water and stuff like that, but you don't need all this crazy tube socks and all, and stuff like that. Like, let's just deal with the bare necessities. So the independent promoter is only spending money on what they really need to spend. So you can get the bonus money, you can get, so there's a happy medium. I wish that overall, American promoters and venues were a little more generous, but it only works out when you're a huge band. Like the cool thing is even if you're a struggling opening band, if you tour Europe, you get meals, you get everything, a place to sleep, you get treated like a headliner. Whereas here in the United States, if you're an opening band, you get treated like an opening band, and you're lucky if you get a bottle of warm tap water and a bag of chips.
Some fucking beer tickets is about as good you're gonna get.
Yeah, and one beer ticket.
I guess on the other side of the discussion is that kind of what I was talking about before. Everybody knows everybody, so somebody's usually going to hook you up in the States with a place to stay. And, like, you'll at least have a floor to sleep on or something like that. Like, it's very rare that you're like, well, we're fucked. We got nowhere to go and no place to play. I mean, but you will find yourself in that situation where it's like, I guess we're shelling out for a hotel because we don't got no other options, So the scene takes care of you a lot.
That's the great thing about like music scenes in general, like the death metal scene or anything. It's the same thing. They'll watch out. There's always somebody, any town, there's always like the touring house crash pad, for years. We had one, like we lived in one in like the early 90s. We called it the Fat House, and like Neurosis would stay there. Like Green Day would stay there, like Born Against would stay there. Like we even had shows in the house, like, because everybody
Born Against was awesome, man. I miss Born Against.
With teen kids, so every community has one of those, and hopefully they're clean. Clean.
Yeah, they never are.
I can remember.
Hopefully the toilet works at a minimum.
Yeah, hopefully the toilet works. I can remember doing this one, being on tour and hanging out. I had booked a tour for the Verruchers, and we the band was like, hey, let's try to avoid paying for a Motel 6 tonight, try and find us a place to stay. So I talked to these local kids and I said, hey, look, we're looking for a place to stay. Like, let me make it clear, I don't want to be rude, but we really need a place that's just quiet and clean, where we can maybe make some food, we can have a couple beers and then go to sleep. We don't want to stay at a party house. Like, it's cool if that's what you want to do, but we've got a 6-hour drive, and these really nice guys were like, no, man, our place is totally cool. It's clean. And yeah, we got bedrooms where if anyone just wants to go to sleep right away, they can. Cool. So, we have one of the guys in the van with us in the band, and he's directing us. And I already know, like, this guy's really nice, but I need to make sure I'm the first one that walks in the house. I need to make sure. So I'm right behind him. He opens the door. I take 2 steps in the house. I see how filthy it is. There's literally trash bags in the living room just that haven't been taken out. like, like, like 3 of them. And I just say to the band, I'm sleeping in the van.
Dude, I was the habitual van sleeper.
Yeah. Like I called it.
Always
the rest of the guys were like, motherfucker, like, so there's only room for 2 people. So me and the drummer slept in the van while the rest of them had to stay in the party house while they blasted music till 4 in the fucking morning.
Dude, yeah, me and Kent Elmore were always in DIS. We were always the dudes who were like, van.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do miss being in a band sometimes, but I don't miss touring. I don't miss it at all. I miss seeing all my friends all over the place. Like, you tour out to Maryland Death Fest or, some other festival, and then you get like all of your friends from all over the world are in one place for like 3 days, and it's like the most fun ever. But I don't miss the touring out there and the touring back.
I've done all kinds of different touring, even to this day, like DIY, like Final Conflict. We did we toured it 2 years ago now with I Hate God and Negative Approach. Oof. And we, it was like some nights we got hotels, sometimes we stayed with friends, and it was a week-long tour. And I seriously had so much fun on that tour. Like we all did. And it was the most fun that I've had on a Final Conflict tour. Jeff, we all agreed, like it was great. It was the first tour we had done in many, many years. And it was just up and down the West Coast. And, but I've also done tours where like I've been with a band like that's getting paid way more money than Final Conflict gets. And we're staying in nice hotels every night, and nothing beats just sleeping in your own bed, no matter what, man. Like I wish they could figure out the whole teleportation thing. Cause I would go and tour for long periods of time if at the end of the night I could teleport back home and just sleep in my bed.
Take a shower in your own shower, eat out of your own fridge, like I said, sleep in your own bed, give your wife a kiss goodnight.
I've done gigs where it's where I maybe like spend a weekend tour managing Cockspar for some American dates. And I've stayed in really nice hotels, and I'm still like, this place is pretty swank, but I'd much rather be at home, like at the end of the night, sleeping in my bed, So I think it's important that as an agent, and I have the ability, I still will go out and do dates but going out on tour for like 3.5 weeks or 2 months. No, like that time's over for me. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. But going out for maybe a couple weeks, if it's touring with a band that I really like and like I'm a fan of, and I know, and I like them as people, I could do that, because it's important as an agent that I can go and see these people and meet these promoters as well. And also be reminded of how hard it can be out on the road. Just the long drives and stuff like that.
Yeah, probably a little bit of like just like what's happening in the tour world. You know what I mean? Like you have to stay on top of like the trends and what are clubs suddenly doing something different. Like all of a sudden they are promoting shows in a certain way. I would imagine for you have to get your eyes on a lot of that shit just to make sure you know what's actually happening in a real world situation. That bands.
I think it helps me be a better agent for my bands. Sure. But any band that I start talking to that I'm going to work with, I make it clear to them, like, listen, I don't want you to look at me as a guy in a band who books tours. I'm a booking agent who plays in a band.
Right.
Because like the agency is my first thing. It's my day job. I make jokes like, with like some of my more straight friends where they're like, what exactly, you like manage bands or something? I'm like, no, I'm a booking agent. I just handle the arrangements of their live shows. I go, basically, it goes, but you're still doing that punk rock thing, right? I'm like, well, yeah. I go, the way it works is I make my money helping other bands go out on tour and making money, so I can go out on tour with my band and lose money.
Yeah. I always looked at being in a tour, like a touring like punk band is like, it's just kind of an expensive hobby. It's what it is.
It can be. I mean, I'm not gonna.
It's like I wouldn't even have instruments to. I was a singer. I didn't even have instruments to fucking pay for. Like, I didn't have a, $3,000 worth of amps and pedals and guitars and shit. Like.
Yeah, I'm not going to paint a picture that doesn't exist. There's been times where I've been able to make some money playing like Final Conflict shows and stuff. But at the same time, again, I joined Final Conflict when I was 19, and the amount of money that we've made for getting paid now, it's just until now, like the last, say, 6 years, where we've actually been able to say, hey, we got flown out to Maryland Death Fest. They paid for our flights. They paid this, and they paid us X amount. We actually made money. Fuck. But it's like, yeah, but it took 30 years. It took getting stranded in Europe on a European tour. It took having X amount of girlfriends break up with me because I'm a loser playing in a shitty band. It took, just so I can go and say, woo, I made $400, but it's totally worth it. None of us ever, nobody starts playing punk rock or underground music, death metal, and says, I'm going to do this as a career choice, because it's a good career choice. I'm going to make money. No, man, you do it because you're having fun, and you go, hey, and if I can make some money, that would be nice. But you always end up spending more than you make.
It's like in the underground genres, death metal, punk rock, hardcore, all that stuff. There's like 1% of bands who can do it professionally and not have to have day jobs. There's like 1%. Yep. It's like in death metal, it's like Cannibal Corpse. That's like it. Like one band.
And who knows? I bet you half those guys do got side gigs, because a couple of the bands that I work with, that prior to pandemic, that really was how they, like, the majority of their income is coming from their consistent touring. A couple of those guys had side gigs. Like when they were touring, like they would work at their friends' restaurants. One guy, he used all the money that he made for years off of his band, and he invested it with his best friend, and they own a restaurant together.
Ah, smart.
Because he always told me, he goes, hey, look, I want my years playing in a punk band to really show for something, and not just I got to open up for so-and-so, or I met, I got to go and get wasted with this person. I want to show for it. And he put his money away, and the time came where he had enough money to invest, and he owns a very swanky restaurant,
That's
and
rad.
He's opening up a second one. But he was like, hey man, punk rock did this for me. He goes, I want to have something to show for it, and say, like, being a dedicated punk rocker and being smart, I was able actually, and there's plenty of bands, like Bruce is another example, your former bandmate and my good friend. Punk rock taught him how to do silk screening. He saved some money. Now he's got Warlord. And he makes merch for other bands, helping other bands out on the road.
Yeah. He's really grown that business. It's really impressive what he's done with Warlord, man. Like, I remember when when him and Shane were doing it together, and then like split off, and he started doing it on his own, and it was like, in his fucking garage. And now he's got like a big ass warehouse, multi-screen automatic presses. It's fucking cool, man. I love seeing that shit. Bruce is a good dude.
And that wasn't given to him. You know what I mean?
No, he busted his ass big time.
He put in the work. He busted his ass, and Carrie helping him at all the festivals and everything like that, working for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting it done and getting it out there and spreading the name. I do wish now that, if he has spare time, he would bring back Jello Bungrisa magazine, because it was like the fucking most hilarious zine that most people didn't know about,
He's one of the funniest people I've ever known in my entire life.
He's fucking hilarious.
And getting to tour with him is like, on the days when you didn't want to strangle him, because that's not specific to him. On the days when you didn't want to strangle somebody, he was making you laugh like constantly. He's such a fucking funny dude. Oh yeah, I miss that he moved all the way out to Riverside. I don't get to see him very much anymore, but he does all my merch for the podcast and stuff. So we're still connected. And yeah, I mean, essentially,
he's one of the only 2 authorized people that's allowed to do our shirts.
For like Final Conflict.
Oh, wow. Yeah, him and Night Gaunt. Anybody else doing our merch is a bootlegger.
Ah, yeah, that Night Gaunt dude. His artwork's dope.
Oh yeah, man! Like
cool.
Rooster is insane. What he does and the quality.
There's some hours in those illustrations for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I every single penny I make is somehow related to things that I learned, or contacts I made through being in the music scene when I from the time I was like 14 years old. Like my whole life is still that, and it's like I think that there are there are those of us who have found a way to be able to be supported by the scene outside of just being in bands. You know what I mean? It's like there's the scene requires a lot more than just the bands. You know, it's like people who book tours, people who book shows, people who manage bands, people who design merch, like record labels. There's a ton of stuff, you know, that goes into the whole pyramid of the underground music scene. And I consider myself to be super fortunate that the thing that I chose to do when I was too young to make that kind of choice ended up being something that, you know, is still what my life is. You know, it's like, I don't think that a lot of people necessarily get that out of their life. And, you know, even my parents who hated the punk rock thing when I was a teenager and didn't understand it, now, you know, they listen to the podcast and they're like, we're just so stoked that it's turned out this way for you. And you have so many cool friends and you've done so many cool things. You've been places. They're like, we could have just have never known that that's what it would be, you know, 30 years later.
Yeah. I was really lucky to have very supportive parents. Like, you know, like I said earlier, you know, Southern California, Mexican, working class Catholic kid. You know, my dad was a pipe fitter. My mom had all kinds of jobs. Both of my parents always worked. And I could say this is like, you know, my parents were like, never really understood the punk rock thing, but they were never against it because they always had this thing of like, hey, look, he might like weird things, but he's in his bedroom. He's listening to his records. We know where he is, and he's not the cops aren't dropping him off at all hours of the night at our house or calling us to pick him up. So they were kind of like, let's just let him do his thing. And then my house kind of became the place where like my friends could hang out, and my parents were very accepting of that. So my parents were more kind of like, look, we've met his friends. We know they're actually good kids. They look different, but they're good kids. My house was a place when this is like, you know, 1981, when shaving your head was going to get your ass kicked by like stoners or metalheads, and they call you punk faggot. And
yeah,
you know,
you couldn't leave your house in the early, before 1987, you couldn't leave your house with colored hair or shaved head without
getting harassed.
Fucking grown men driving by in their car and going, fucking fag. You know, it's like grown men. Like it's just such a, people today cannot understand.
And I'm glad that kids today don't have to deal with that and don't have to worry about that. But
yeah, I was talking to Joe Sib about that. And he was like, that means we won. The fact that kids today can go to the store and buy fucking punk rock t-shirts, we won. He's like, anybody who complains about how easy it is to be a punk doesn't understand that we won. This means we won. No, and I was 100%. Like, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like I had friends that would get kicked out of their houses for quote turning punk, and wow. And my parents were the parents who were like, your friend got kicked out because he shaved his head. Well, I guess he's staying the night here. You know, like my parents were those people, and very accepting and real supportive, to the point where like the first band, Warren Renfro, we're in together, they let us rehearse in the garage, and my dad used to stand. I know we were awful. And my dad would argue with my neighbors, telling them to shut up. Like, look, they're not bothering it. You know, they'll be done at 5:00. Deal with it. You know?
Yeah, it grew on my parents, and definitely after the first few years, it was a very similar thing where once they got to know my friends, they were like, oh, these kids are good kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, my sister was like a cheerleader, and she had, you know, all of her friends were like, you know, the jocks, and like, and there was always cops involved in all of their shit. And like me and my friends never had police issues. And I come from a family of law enforcement. So so it was like that made a very large impression on my parents over the course of a little bit of time. They're like, oh, these kids aren't getting in trouble. They go out and they're being victimized by everybody. So my house ended up becoming like a place where, you know, like I had to leave and live on the street for a while, a couple times before they kind of figured out it wasn't going to go away, and wasn't something I was going to outgrow. And then, you know, once we kind of came to some kind of like agreement on it, they were super cool, and like they still, you know, they are still in contact with some of my punk rock friends that I was, you know, that they befriended, you know, back in the day. Cause I still live in the same neighborhood, and like a bunch of my friends still live in the same neighborhood, and they'll see him at the store. And so, yeah, I mean, it ended up working out in the end, but yeah, like there was always those parents that were like your parents, where it was like, oh yeah, you can sleep here. Like if you need to stay here for a week, stay here for a week. We got you.
Yeah, that's exactly how my parents were. And like I said, they didn't pretend to try and understand the punk rock thing. All they just knew is like, what are these kids doing wrong? And my parents were really supportive of, and even to this day, like my parents like are really into what I do, and they understand. And I'm very fortunate, like,
yeah,
being able to, my income is based on working in music, within music. And I can remember like when the pandemic was really like, I think about June, July time last year, and I was getting really concerned and going, fuck, what am I going to do, man? Like if live music is just going to be dead for like more than a year, and I can't play with my band, and like if this thing gets worse, I mean, I have no job right now. And I was really going, well, I guess I'll get a job at the post office or something.
Call Dan Kaufman. He'll help you get a job at the post office.
Yeah. But the thing is like, I really don't want, it had popped up a couple times where maybe you could work with a record label because records are selling like crazy. But it was like, I don't really want to go that route. I've worked for other record labels before, and it's just not my thing, like working for other record labels.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I was just like, well, one thing that isn't going to change is like, I'm not going to stop being into music. I'm not going to stop playing. There's no way I can stop doing that because I still love doing it. And there's definitely going to come a time, like, again, I'm 55, where getting in a van and touring and lugging my amps out and everything is not going to be a reality, but I'll probably still make music, and I'm still going to listen to music, and I'm still going to go and support other bands and buy records and all that. It's like, I'm just not going to cease. Like, okay, that was great. That was a great career. Now I'm done. I'm going to like dump my entire vinyl collection.
Yeah, no, we're fucking lifers, dude. Guys like us, this is our life for all of our life. I don't even know what life would look like if I didn't do all of the things that I do. Like I don't even know. Yeah, I got a little bit freaked out at the beginning of the pandemic where I'm like, oh, bands can't tour. There's not going to be much merch to get made. And I was getting a little worried. It's like, wow, what if I have to go get a job? What the fuck would I even do? I don't even know if I could work around people.
We got that. We did the shirt design with you right at the pandemic.
Right, but it kind of was before.
It was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because we're doing this guy rising out of the grave, the Iron Maiden live before death, and the back says Horror Show 2020. Could not be more appropriate. It should have said Shit Show 2020 because that's what I always refer to 2020 as, a pandemic shit show.
Yeah, it totally was.
But it was so prophetic, like.
Yeah, sometimes you just get it right.
Yeah, but yeah, like there was never any question in my mind that my commitment to being a musician and making music and being involved with it, I was just trying to figure out, well, what I'm going to do for work, because it's looking like, and yeah, a lot of people didn't realize how much. They just thought, oh, well, bands just won't play for a while. But there was like, hey, you're not thinking about the people that work at venues, the bartenders, the merchandise companies, the people who make the merch, the people who design the merch, like they're the merch people who I felt so bad for, because a lot of those people have spent years working in a cash industry and they couldn't get benefits because they weren't reporting their earnings,
yeah,
which
I was part of that. I was part of that thing. It was like, I've been doing my own thing, getting, all my income through PayPal and shit for like forever. Like I didn't have any way to show that I could get unemployment with, it was fucking crazy, man. It was, but yeah, I stayed busy. The contract I have with Kid Robot Toy Company, it was like, they were just like, oh, we'll keep you loaded down. And I stayed busy. I was very, very, very lucky because my wife, being in the film industry, she didn't work for, like 8 months because nothing was getting made.
Yeah, I mean, it was the filming, TV, all that was shut down. Like friends we had that worked in the people who worked in the beauty industry. Period.
Yeah, my niece.
These are people who were so at risk because they're touching other people's faces. They're
Yeah.
touching their mucous membranes. They're so susceptible to getting sick.
Yeah, yeah. My niece is a hairstylist in San Francisco, and like that salon's gone. You know, and it's like, and then her sister, my other niece, like she does like eyebrows and shit. Like they were fucked, and they're like at that age where they were just getting going, and they're like, well, we just lost it. They're in their
Building
early
a clientele,
20s.
and then now a lot
Lost the whole year of their lives to that shit.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. My daughter's a nurse, and that was insanely nerve-wracking at all times. At knowing that she was in a COVID testing center, so it was even more crazy.
Holy shit, man.
It says my internet connection's acting funky. Hopefully
You went blank for a second, but your video's fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that was crazy. She was in a testing facility, and I was just like fucking panic stricken about her getting sick, and yeah, it was gnarly. And both of my sons do stuff that they could work remote easy, and so they were both. But my middle son, like, he basically, as far as we all can tell, had it in January. Woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't breathe, had all the COVID symptoms, went to the hospital, and they were like, we don't know. And we think maybe it's asthma, but it wasn't even on the radar. And like, they just like sent him home with some asthma medication. He was like sick for like 7-8 days, and then fine. It's like, fuck, man, what a weird year. Well, I'm glad things are starting to like open up a little bit for your industry. I guess at this point it's still a little bit of watch and see, but
the money's not coming in. You know what I mean? Like the tours haven't happened yet, and the money won't even be coming in until maybe next year, like or later in the year, if at all. We have to see. Like I said, like now we're seeing a spike in infection rates, and and it's fortunate that people who are vaccinated aren't dying, but unfortunate that people who aren't are dying,
Yeah.
And there's already been discussions within the industry about we might have, so we can avoid a shutdown, we might have to make events vaccination only.
Yeah.
Which I think that is probably our only recourse to keep things going. Because
what a giant hassle that'll create, though, because the people who don't want to get vaccinated are just not going to lay down and allow themselves to be excluded from things. They're going to cause problems, and I can't.
And that is their choice. It is their choice to not be vaccinated, but at the same time, and I support that. I support someone who for whatever, if it's some stupid reason like big pharma and Bill Gates, or people who are fear-based that are just like, I'm really scared of the vaccine. I'm worried that I don't have enough information that makes me feel confident. Whatever it is, it's their right to not get vaccinated, but it is not their right to risk other people's safety. They can risk their own safety all they want,
I 100%.
And whether they believe that the virus it's a virus or not, or how lethal it is, that's not their decision. Like, it's not my decision to tell people they should be vaccinated. But the whole thing is that I think it's the only way to keep our business model open is to go in that direction. Because what I don't want to, and it's something that this will have already happened by the time this podcast airs, but Lower Class Brats has a show in a couple weeks in San Diego. And as you know, just this weekend, LA went into a mandatory mask mandate if you're indoors. So basically meaning that people in a concert hall will have to wear their masks while they're inside. And what we talked to the venue about, and we told them is that, look, if San Diego goes into a mandatory mask mandate before our show, we are only going to play if you as the venue decide that you want to do the mandatory mask mandate and are taking it upon yourself to enforce it. We are not going to perform against any mandate, nor are we going to demand that people do the right thing, because that is not our job. What we don't want is a venue that just doesn't care, and then there's video footage of us performing with a bunch of people maskless, and it looks like we don't care. Like, again, like, we're vaccinated, and we social distance, like we all practice social distancing. And it's up to everybody else to do it as well. We can't make them. But yeah, like I'm just not going to get caught in the middle. I try to keep this as unpolitical as possible. I don't want to get, because this is a virus. It doesn't care what your income is. It doesn't care who you voted for. It doesn't care. Science and fact and viruses do not give a fuck. You can't say fuck you to the COVID. It says fuck you to you, you know? So it's like, but people don't want to agree with that. I mean, that's totally okay. That's the, you know, everybody has a right to be, you know, to their own thing. Doesn't mean
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And you know, we see it exactly the same way. Like, I'm not the person who's like, thinks that the people who aren't getting vaccinated should be made to do so. I think, you know, I'm a little bit of an anarchist, so like I get that. But at the same time, like, you also have to understand that decision has consequences for yourself. And so you don't get to, at a later time, start blaming other people for the ramifications of a decision that you made if you get sick, or if there's things that you can't do with your life because you're not willing to get on board with what needs to be done. You know, I just want people to be free to make the decision, but also have enough wisdom to deal with the consequences of the decision that they made. And that's where shit gets slippery, is because I think a lot of people who aren't getting vaccinated don't want to deal with the ramifications of that decision. Yeah. That's where it gets sticky.
Yeah. Private businesses, they it's their choice. Like, you know, you go into a restaurant, it says no shoes, no service. It says no shoes, no shirt, no service. Same thing applies. It's no different. And if they say they don't want your business because you're not vaccinated, it's their right. It's a private business.
Right.
You know, just to say, if I went into a store with a fuck Trump shirt on or fuck the Republican shirt, and the owner says, hey man, I don't feel like serving you. It's my place. And I'm offended. I would go, okay, fuck you. And I'd walk out. I wouldn't go and try and put them out of business.
Right.
I wouldn't try and put them on blast. I would just say, hey, this place isn't getting my money. Screw them, you know, and I would just leave.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the thing with the world that we live in now is, you have a lot more say with how you spend your money than almost any other way you can do anything. So it's like, you know,
vote with your dollar.
You vote with your dollar more than any time that I can remember in my lifetime. And it's like, yeah, man, I just don't do business with places that are, you know, and it's like, but at the same time, like, you know, it's, if I walk into your Chick-fil-A wearing a fucking, you know, Bathory shirt with the giant fucking upside down cross on it, and you're like, that's not cool, we don't like that, I'm just gonna fucking leave. Like, you know, it's okay. It's okay if you have it how you want it too. You know, I'll go someplace else. I don't give a shit.
Chick-fil-A, I'm sure Chick-fil-A is pretty much down for Corthon and Bathory. They just don't want you to be gay. That's where they would have the problem with. Then they'd say, oh, and you're gay? Okay, now get out of here. Actually, we don't have a problem with the same thing.
To be honest, I think Chick-fil-A is literally, they're like, I don't even think they care if people are gay, like as far as like patrons or as my understanding of it, I don't know why we're talking about this at all, but it's like, I think their thing is like, us as a family who owns this business, we're Christian and we're going to go with what our beliefs are. But if you want to work here, or you want to come and do business here, like, we don't care. We do business with whoever. I'm just as a family there. I know. But it's like, but yeah, like, you know, it's a little bit of, you know, in life, you know, you got to be able to read the room a little bit. And it's like, if you are doing something to intentionally inflame the situation, you know, like, you get what you ask for in life a lot of times. And I never feel like, I would never be like, well, I think those people should just die. You know, like, I'm not about that. But at the same time, I'm not going to feel bad if you get the result that you asked for. You know what I mean? Like,
100,
I'm
yeah,
not going to be, I'm not going to
100%.
pray. I'm not going to be happy that I'm not going to root for you to die, but I'm also not going to be surprised if you do. Like, it was a choice you made. There are ramifications
Yeah.
for all the choices you make. There are ramifications for the choices of getting vaccinated. There are ramifications for not getting vaccinated and all of the things in between. And I want everybody, I'm a fucking freedom person, man. I'm like is this concept make people more free or less free? And if it's more free, that's the side I fall down on. And so, go back to that DIY spirit, do it yourself. But at the same time, it's on your fucking head, whatever it is, the ramifications.
Yeah. Fuck around, find out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people going through that right now, isn't there? There's a lot of finding out happening at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm going to let you go. My internet was fucking up. I got the cable company's going to be here in like 15 minutes to rewire all my stuff so that I don't go through this all the time. But I appreciate you coming on, Ron. It was really cool to sit and talk with you. And I'm sure there's going to be projects in the works between all of our bands and stuff like that. So, I'm sure we'll be in touch soon, but I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah. I really appreciate you having me on.
Cool, man. So I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.